Jenny had been looking forward to her vacation for months. She had decided to book an errand in the countryside for a weekend getaway. She had always been a city girl, so the thought of spending a few days surrounded by nature was exhilarating. The reservation was a quaint little cabin nestled in the woods. It was exactly what she had hoped for. Cozy, rustic, and with a beautiful view of the mountains. The host, a man named Tom, had been very helpful during the booking process, and even more so when Jenny arrived at the cabin. Tom showed Jenny around the cabin and gave her a quick rundown of how everything worked. He seemed friendly and hospitable, and Jenny was grateful for his help. But as the weekend progressed, she began to notice some strange things. Firstly, Tom seemed to be around the cabin far more than he had let on. He claimed to live in a town about an hour away, but Jenny had seen his car parked outside the cabin several times. She didn't think much of it at first, assuming he was just checking on things, but it started to feel intrusive. Secondly, the cabin itself was not quite what she had expected. There were strange noises in the middle of the night, creaks and groans that seemed to come from the walls themselves. And the more she explored the cabin, the more she noticed small details that were off. A book on the shelf that seemed too old, a picture frame that was crooked but couldn't be straightened, and a feeling that she was not alone in the cabin, even when Tom wasn't there. Jenny tried to put her unease aside and enjoy her vacation, but the strange occurrences continued. She began to feel like she was being watched, and every time she turned around, she half expected to see Tom lurking in the shadows. On the second night of her stay, Jenny was jolted awake by a loud banging on the door. She leaped out of bed, heart pounding, and rushed to the door. But when she looked through the peephole, she saw no one there. She tried to calm herself down and went back to bed, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was trying to get inside the cabin. She lay awake for hours, listening to the sounds of the night, until finally exhaustion overtook her and she fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, Jenny decided to cut her vacation short. She didn't feel safe in the cabin anymore and couldn't wait to leave. She texted her friend, describing the whole situation, and asked her to come get her. As she packed her bags, she noticed something strange on the dresser. A small camera pointed directly at her bed. Her heart raced as she realized that Tom had been spying on her the entire time. She quickly grabbed her things and made her way to the front door, but as she turned the handle, it wouldn't budge. She tried again and again, but the door was locked from the outside. Panic set in as she realized that Tom had trapped her inside the cabin. She rushed to the window and looked out, but all she could see was dense forest, with no path or road in sight. Jenny knew she had to find a way out, but as she frantically searched for a phone or a tool to break the window, she heard a sound that made her blood run cold, footsteps approaching the cabin. She had no choice but to hide, so she ducked behind the couch and waited, heart racing, as the footsteps grew closer and closer. She could hear the sound of keys jingling in the lock, and then the door slowly creaked open. Jenny peeked out from behind the couch and saw Tom's silhouette in the doorway. Tom stepped into the cabin, looking around as if searching for something. Jenny held her breath, praying that he wouldn't find her hiding spot. But as he turned towards the couch, she knew her luck had run out. Tom approached the couch, his footsteps slow and deliberate. Jenny's heart was pounding in her chest as she tried to stay still and silent, but her body was shaking with fear. Suddenly, Tom stopped in front of the couch and crouched down, peering behind it. Jenny closed her eyes, waiting for the worst. But to her surprise, Tom just took something from his pocket and went to the exit. Jenny watched as he walked to the door and placed a small object on the shelf. As Tom turned to leave, Jenny saw her chance. She leaped out from behind the couch and ran towards the door, hoping to catch him off guard. But as she reached the door, she felt a sharp pain in her neck and everything went black. When Jenny woke up, she was lying on the floor of the cabin. She tried to move, but her limbs felt heavy and unresponsive. As she struggled to open her eyes, she saw Tom standing over her, holding a syringe. "Welcome back," he said, his voice cold and calculated. "I hope you enjoyed your little nap." Jenny tried to speak, but her throat felt tight and constricted. She realized with horror that Tom had injected sleeping pills. "Don't worry," Tom continued. "You won't be awake for much longer. I have a special surprise planned for you." Jenny's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out, but her body felt weak and sluggish, and she knew there was no escape. Tom crouched down beside her, a sickening smile on his face. "You see, Jenny, I've been waiting for someone like you. Someone who is young and healthy and naive enough to fall for my little trap." Jenny tried to move, to fight back, but her body wouldn't respond. She was completely at Tom's mercy. "You thought you were just renting a cabin for the weekend," Tom continued, "but in reality, you were the main attraction of my little game. A game that I've been playing for years." Jenny's heart sank as she realized the full extent of Tom's depravity. She was just another victim in a sick and twisted game. But then, a glimmer of hope. Jenny heard a faint tapping on the window. She strained to see through the foggy glass and saw a figure outside, waving frantically. It was a policeman responding to her friend's call for help. Jenny knew she had to hold on a little longer, to stay conscious until the officer could rescue her. As Tom gloated over his victory, Jenny focused all her energy on staying awake. She prayed for the detective to find her in time, to stop Tom from hurting anyone else. And then, with a final burst of strength, she screamed for help. The sound echoed through the cabin, and she saw Tom's expression shift from triumph to fear. Suddenly, the door burst open and the detective rushed in, gun drawn. Tom tried to flee, but he was no match for the detective's quick reflexes. As Jenny was carried out of the cabin, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. She was safe, and Tom would never hurt anyone again. But as she looked back at the cabin, she saw something that chilled her to the bone. On the shelf, where Tom had placed the small object, she saw a miniature camera pointed directly at her. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. Tom had been recording everything, and there was no telling how many more victims there were before her.